Welcome to Planet People, a podcast that aims to inspire curiosity and cultivate a deeper connection with the natural world.
We are thrilled to be sharing stories with you that highlight the beauty and importance of protecting our planet's wildlife.
Be sure to follow us on social media and your favorite podcast streaming platform so that you never miss an episode. Happy New Year, Planet People. We are so excited to be starting 2026 out with a very fun surprise. And hello, Coral. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yes, I'm so excited for this Planet People Book Club.
Let's go. That's right. We are launching our first ever Planet People Book Club, and we're bringing it to you with this very fun episode ahead of us with none other than Josh Jackson, who is the author of The Enduring Wild, which is really based off of his project called Forgotten Lands.
Yeah, it's really cool that we can highlight these authors, these Planet People authors doing such good work with their written words. I mean, this is like a area that I'm certainly not an expert, definitely no writer. Natalie is like the writer of the group. And so it's really cool to see people using their talents in this awesome way to highlight places that they love, animals that they love. And we always talk about books on this show, so I think it's just a natural progression.
Yeah, it feels fitting to bring a book club to you guys. And especially, actually, we had a lot of authors actually reaching out to us and emailing our Planet People account requesting to be on the show. And so we kind of thought, well, maybe there's a little bit of a opportunity here to actually not niche down on this because we don't make anything niche in this show, but kind of offer a way for people to come together as, a Planet People community and discuss some of these maybe more overarching themes of a lot of our episodes and seasons. That's why this book is perfect for season 2 about desert conservation, because Josh covers a lot of really stories about the desert landscape and other BLM lands, and we even break up what the heck is BLM, what is a public land. And this book describes a lot of that, and so it just fits in perfectly with the season.
It really does. And the way that we're going to structure this is we're going to highlight one book that relates to what we're talking about here on Planet People each month. So this is our January book and the start of our book club. So The Enduring Wild, A Journey into California's Public Lands by Josh Jackson.
It's awesome. It's such an inspiring book. And we hope you guys really like what we have to share with Josh and the discussion that we have. His story is definitely near and dear to my heart, mainly because he was exploring Barstow, all of these desert places that we talk about, around the same time that I was during the pandemic, post-pandemic. And his story just resonates a lot with me as someone who also understands the importance of these overlooked landscapes.
Yeah, we hope that you support this author. Please get his book today if you're interested.
Make sure to buy it from his website, forgottenlands.com, because otherwise authors just don't make as much money if you buy it on Amazon or in other places.
And since this is our first book club episode, there's a lot of kinks that we need to work out, and we're excited to use this as a way to connect with our audience even more. Traditionally with book clubs, you read a few chapters, you get together with people and you talk about it, and we would love to do that with you. So please let us know how you're enjoying our book club series as it progresses, and maybe that's something that we can implement.
I definitely would love for that to be the case. If you all listening in would be interested in maybe meeting once a month about the book that we offer on the show, I think it would be a great way to bring our virtual listeners into more of this Planet People community that we're actively building out. It goes beyond really listening to these stories on the show, and for us, we hope to do more in-person type of gatherings, whether it be virtual, online, or actually in person. I think a book club is a really good way to start bridging some of these listeners into active community members with Planet People.
Yeah, 100%. So that being said, I know we'll get into it a little bit more, but what resonated with you about Josh's book, The Enduring Wild?
Well, what I really love about the book is, first of all, the name, The Enduring Wild. And it really, I think, refers to how BLM lands have been so resilient. BLM lands really are a stronghold for preserved landscapes across North America and especially across the West. And we see that in California because California has a desert beating heart. And much of that desert has been preserved thanks to BLM. Well, and I really liked how Josh originally mentioned that when he was first an outdoor enthusiast, he would go to national parks, and that the rest of wherever he was passing between to get between Joshua Tree and Death Valley was just a drive-by desert. His view completely changed when he spent more time there. And through this episode and through his book, you can really see the transformation of what it takes to have patience and understand that nature reveals itself over time. And that same like revelation in nature can happen inward for you when you literally just walk in the desert. Not hike, not try to peak the summit, but walk slowly and intentionally like a desert tortoise. And then you'll actually know the secrets of the desert. And that's why I love Josh's book.
Hmm.
Why did you love his book?
I think my reason's a little bit more superficial. Like I think his book is a wonderful, I say this in the episode, but I think his book is a wonderful like coffee table book. It's just gorgeous. The cover is gorgeous,
It is gorgeous.
beautiful landscape. And then when you flip through, I mean, there's plenty and plenty of pictures. And I think a lot of times coffee table books are just picture books. But his has pictures and then just like his story and everything that he's learned on his journey. And I think I just love the juxtaposition of the two.
Like,
And yeah, it's a little bit more superficial than what you said, but I just as a book in general, I think that that's what
no, I
really
like that
resonates.
take because it is actually a beautiful fucking book. Like the
Yeah.
cover is beautiful. When I first saw that he was publishing this and I saw the front cover, I was just captivated. Like it moves something in you. It really does. I wonder where that front cover is actually taken. It almost looks like it's up towards the Eastern Sierra Nevada right before you kind of enter like Alancha and Lone Pine, but I could be totally wrong.
Sure, it says it in the book somewhere too.
Also, another thing that I loved was the drawings on the inside of some of the desert landscapes. And in addition to that, he has some really beautiful maps in here, which I think help you visualize kind of the geography of the land and sort of like literally where the rock formations are and where they jut out and stuff. Um,
Yeah, beautifully executed.
indeed. And maps tell a great story. You know, you can learn a lot from a map. They're very universal because everyone can understand them. And so giving that really allows the reader to, and I guess our listeners right now watching, to kind of visualize where the hell are these BLM lands and what the fuck are they, right? What is a BLM land? He breaks that down. And so he breaks it down in the book and the episode. And I
Yeah.
don't want to give too much away, but I am very excited about this being your first book for our book club series. And Josh is just fabulous.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it.
After my experience in the Amargosa, I went back to BLM lands in the Mojave and Colorado deserts on 11 more trips over the course of 4 winters, the season when visiting these parched locales is less formidable and the risk of dying from heat exposure or getting fanged by a rattlesnake drops to more acceptable levels. I sometimes ventured alone, other times with friends, and I often took my family, introducing my kids to these lands that had come to mean so much to me. From wrapping up against the cool temperatures at sunrise to shedding layers in the midday heat and then circling back toward camp as the moon started to make an appearance, I have walked almost 200 very slow miles in those regions. When I set out on this project, I had wondered what kind of scenery I'd find in these BLM landscapes in the desert, and I remember wondering if they even had any stories worth telling. It didn't take long for these questions to drop to the wayside in a state of complete irrelevance, fading into the background with each step until they had disappeared altogether. And the accumulating effect of spending long days walking the arid country and cold nights sleeping under the stars, the holiness of the desert began manifesting itself one pilgrimage at a time. Yes, there was the kind of blockbuster scenery that takes your breath away, the kind that compels you to hug your kids and kiss your lover, the kind that makes you want to scream a loud thank you to the universe for such a moment, like getting to climb inside the 79,000-year-old Amboy crater, or running down the colossal, never-ending sand dunes in the Cadiz Dunes wilderness, and those 100-mile views, the wildlife, the endemic flora, These awe-inspiring scenes were scattered across lands once deemed unattractive and lifeless. But there were also more subtle beauties to be found, like watching the moonrise chase the sunset from one horizon to another, reinvigorating colors in the landscape you hadn't noticed during the day, or witnessing the delicate red flowers of the ocotillo, or smelling the fragrance of creosote following a rain, or the way the desert feels in the late evening after a long day in the sun, when those cool breezes hum by and the night sky comes alive with stars. There is a collective exhale among all the living. The flora can open their pores, the coyotes can begin their howling, and the humans can head for the porch or the camp chair and rest easy until the sun rises again. Amidst the extraordinary and nuanced scenery of the desert, I experienced a pilgrimage to the self. Each mile made me confront my preconceived notions of what it means to be immersed in nature. I had always looked for show-stopping scenery and pulse-raising adventures around every corner, and I used to feel underwhelmed if I didn't find them. But the desert invited me to leave behind my notions about what I might find or experience, or even how I might feel. A person can go looking for this or for that, whatever it is they have in mind, but the desert doesn't always give you an explosion of grandeur. Holiness here is not a rapture, it is a whisper, reminding you that everything you need to see is around you at every moment. The great secret of the desert is that it often sings quietly, offering sweet melodies for anyone who will listen.
Yay! That was
Thank you so
amazing.
much for reading from your book, Josh. We're so happy to have you on the show today.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Big fan of the pod.
We are a big fan of you. Thank you so much. And to all of our Planet people out there, this is the first of many book club episodes. We have Josh Jackson, the author of The Enduring Wilds. Yee!
I'm so happy to have this book with me. It's really about an amazing project called Forgotten Lands. And Josh, I'm so excited for you to share a little bit about your journey in writing this book and what Forgotten Lands really mean to you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here and talk with you guys. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah. And I had the great pleasure of going to a book reading that Josh did last night. And just got me even more pumped for this
Mhm.
conversation. It's just so fitting that this is like our first book club episode, especially with season two, because it's all about BLM land and the desert and finding beauty in life overlooked, which has been the biggest theme of this entire series. And that seems to be the biggest theme with the Forgotten Lands project and this book. And you can really feel that in your writing and everything that you've shared with the world so far about it. And so happy to have you on this platform to continue that message.
Thank you.
So, Josh, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what inspired you to write this book and how you embody being a planet person in your everyday life?
Yeah, I'm a writer, photographer, speaker, and guide, and that's kind of like what I do for a living now. I used to be a furniture maker, designer for 15 years, and like in 2020, as we all went through all these massive changes in our lives, I kind of pivoted to spending a lot of time thinking and writing about BLM landscapes out in the West. And so, yeah, that's kind of my quick background. I'm a planet person because this Earth that we call home, spinning around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour, what Carl Sagan called the pale blue dot, this is all we've got. And so I don't know how you couldn't be a planet person.
How did you become so passionate about the planet and public lands?
I think I've always been into public lands. I grew up in Michigan with three sisters and parents who didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough money to do like an epic camping trip every summer on public lands in the state parks of Indiana. And that's really where I kind of broke bread, so to speak, with my love for nature. There was also this literally, it was a 1 acre wood in the middle of cornfields behind my house. It was like 1,000 foot walk to get to this little 1 acre woods, and it had this ephemeral creek running through it. And it was kind of the first place I learned how to build a campfire and build some forts and climb trees. And, it's the first time I saw like a fox out in the wild, kind of took my breath away. That's really, and I don't even know still to this day who owned that land. So that was like probably a 1 acre private land in the middle of these cornfields. And that's really where I like found nature as like this healing presence, but also like the cure for like after school and summer boredom was really that little woods behind my house. That was, looking back, it was absolutely tiny. Um, but that kind of started this obsession. I moved to California 20 years ago, and being from Michigan, where we didn't have a lot of public land, I just could not believe that half of California was public land. We have 9 national parks, we have a lot of Forest Service land, we have tons of state parks, hundreds of state parks that we can go camping in. As a person who grew up in Michigan on the shores of Lake Michigan, where private property sort of also owned the beach in front of it. Coming to California, where the entire coastline is public property that no one actually owns a little slice of heaven on the beach there, that kind of took my breath away. And then, of course, in 2015, it was the first time I had ever heard of this term Bureau of Land Management, public lands, and coming to terms with realizing that we have 15 million acres of BLM lands in California alone.
It's a lot.
It's unbelievable. And
Yeah.
that really began this whole journey that we can get into on this podcast with discovering BLM land and, falling more deeply in love with our public lands across the West. And then, wanting to, the more you learn about the threats that these lands face. And we simply don't have enough people telling the story of BLM landscapes, and like, how do we protect what we don't know? And so I set out to really write this book to highlight and showcase the beauty of these landscapes, but also the fragility, like kind of awe and alarm braided together, so that more people might experience them for themselves and then be more likely to protect them.
I love what you just said, awe and alarm braided together. I feel like that is just articulated so beautifully because that's what it is now, right? I mean, we try our best on Planet People to take the doomsday out of climate change. It is happening, but how can we really enjoy ourselves in nature and be in that awe moment while also understanding, oh, there's action to be taken here. And I just love that, you set out to kind of reconnect into nature as an adult, and it kind of, you listened to that call, and then
Mm-hmm.
wrote this book. I mean, it's just the perfect example of, someone using their talents for the betterment of our planet. So I really appreciate you and what you're doing.
Yeah, I think we all kind of have to live in that tension, don't we? Because it's one thing to celebrate a landscape without anything attached to it. It's another thing to just write or think about raising like a klaxon alarm of the threats that these landscapes face. And so I think you kind of have to live in that tension of awe and alarm braided together. You have to celebrate the place while also speak to its fragility. I think they have to go hand in hand, but it is hard to, you know, I think some organizations lean in one direction and then some people lean in the other direction. And for me, it's always been about that balance and that tension.
For sure. So in 2015, you said, what kind of sparked that need to want to venture out to these lands? Like, what was that call? I mean, I know that you mentioned having this furniture workshop that you had, but like, what was in you that was like, oh, I need to get out there?
Yeah, I opened the book, the introduction. It's the first line is that it all started with looking for a place to camp. I had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old at the time in 2015. We just had a third child. She was a newborn. And those last few months of pregnancy, you're kind of hunkering down. You don't get out much. You're just kind of waiting in this beautiful time of waiting. And so by the time we had our third child and it had been like a month, we got through the holidays. By January, my 5-year-old and 2-year-old and I were pretty desperate to get out of the house. My wife was also pretty desperate to get some alone time with our newborn. And I So we were like, let's go camping. I get on the websites for the state parks and national parks. Everything within 2 or 3 hours of Los Angeles is, of course, booked solid. Even in January, it's like every weekend is booked. And I reached out to my friend Justin, who had this special knack of finding campsites out of thin air. And I'm like, this is our predicament. Do you have any suggestions? And he said, why don't you camp on some BLM land? Of course, to which I replied, what is that? And where is that? I
A
had no
valid
idea.
question.
Yeah, I had literally, this is even as an avid outdoor enthusiast, I had never heard of the term BLM land.
And most people don't.
And most people don't know anything about it. It's kind of remarkable, which is part of what led to this lifelong obsession. Um, and then I said, "Well, where is this?" And he said, "I think it's out in the desert somewhere." I was like, "You
Even
don't
more
even know
vague.
where this is, man." But it
He
gave me
wasn't
like
wrong. He
he
wasn't wrong.
wasn't. Yeah, that's true. He just didn't have a lot of details. So I got on the BLM website, which felt like going into the pixelated domains of dial-up, tiny kilobyte-sized pictures with very, very little information.
Classic
It's
government website.
historically bad, right? But I did find this place called the Trona Pinnacles, which is out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And it had a pit toilet, so I knew I'd be in good hands with, three of us camping out there. It was open dispersed camping. And so my 5-year-old, 2-year-old, and I loaded up our Honda Element and we headed out to the desert. And, like you get off the paved road and it's 6 miles to these pinnacles and it's just super sandy. And I was probably in way over my head
Ooh.
with two-wheel drive. So, but my 2-year-old like sat on my lap as we like fishtailed our way through the sand. My 5-year-old's riding shotgun. We were like hooting and hollering. It was pretty special. And then you get out to these pinnacles and there are these tufa spires that are like 250 feet off the ground and they look like those drip sandcastles you make at the beach. It was very ethereal and otherworldly landscape surrounded by these salt flats. So like when my kids and I were like running around, it feels like they said, oh, it's like a giant trampoline. Just like this really, really wonderful experience. And that was my first ever time camping or experiencing BLM land. And it really just led to this curiosity that started eating away at me at night. Like we get home and now I have 3 kids under the age of 6. We still did a ton of camping, but mostly in state parks. But this BLM stuff was like in the back of my mind. I got this like little journal, like a pocket-sized journal, and I just started writing down everything I learned about the BLM lands. I went to the library, checked out every book I could find that had anything to do with public lands or BLM lands, which really nothing was out there about BLM. Bought a bunch of books and just started reading, pouring this foundation of like understanding where they came from, what kind of landscapes they contained, and what they were all about. And that really was the foundation for this whole thing, was just reading a ton of books. And then in 2020, at this point, I still hadn't really gotten to experience a lot of BLM lands. We have our regular camping spots, they're state parks, national forest. So we didn't really venture out too much. Plus, with these young kids, we had like a travel pack and play that we put inside our tent. Like we needed a few amenities like pit toilets and fire rings and picnic tables that a lot of BLM lands don't have. So anyway, in 2020, of course, everybody's going through this massive shift in our lives, and our retail store that we owned had to close down because we were a non-essential business. And the designers and architects we worked with were also kind of in this weird spot where they weren't getting enough work, which meant we weren't getting enough work. So I had suddenly had time in my schedule. And so my wife and I sat on the porch during those like late March, early April days, and we're like this might be a good time to start going to see these places.
Mm.
And that's it. Like April 2020 is when I took my first trip. We actually went back to the Trona Pinnacles as a family, and then it just kind of all grew from there. And spent the last 5 years um, going out to see these places. Like, where are they, and what do they have, and um, trying to figure out how to tell the story of these places.
That was certainly the silver lining, I think, I mean, there's a few silver lining of COVID, but I think it pushed a lot of people outside because all of a sudden you couldn't go outside. You had to stay home and couldn't
Hmm.
live your normal life. And you're not the first person that kind of, it pushed them to reconnect with nature in this bigger way. in this life-changing way. I mean, this completely changed your life and your
Hmm.
everyday, which is wonderful. So, yeah, it's awesome. Something that was said last night in your book reading that just completely resonated with me is um, the difference between going to these places, taking some pictures, then going home, right? You go to these places, you go back to these places, you do research on these. It's like you have a deeper understanding of the land um, and nature in general and what needs to be protected in these lands. And I just really appreciate that sentiment. And I think that your book does such a wonderful job about that because your book is like the perfect coffee table book. And
Hmm.
I think that it's also a perfect coffee table book for somebody at a party that doesn't necessarily want to socialize because it's not just pictures. Like, it's not just a picture book, right? You have this beautiful photography in your book, but then you have just a really deep, masterful articulation of these things in accompaniment of it, not just pictures with a caption, right? Like you have an entire story to go along with it.
And I will also note that I love the photos of the maps and like the creosote bush and Rainbow Mountain. I just think the illustrations are so creative and different.
Mm.
And do such a great job of telling a story. And
Hmm.
that's how I really resonated with your work when I found your Instagram, like
Mm.
way back when you first started the project. I think you had less than 1,000 followers. And I was like, wow, he's really out here exploring just like me. I was out there around the same time as you, and I was like, this is so cool. He's discovering these same lands. And one of my favorite parts of your book so far is when you talk about going to Rainbow Basin and Owl Canyon.
Mm. Yeah, when I felt that was my very, very first trip, like official kind of, all right, we're gonna do this. I like wrote down every single BLM landscape in California that I wanted to get to. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of names written down. And Rainbow Basin's kind of the closest like campground, not the closest, but closest to LA that I could get to. And I thought, what a better place to start than in Owl Canyon. And I went there and it was overwhelming to say the least. I walked like almost a marathon in 3 days, and I just saw as much of the place as I could. And I wrote about in the opening chapter, but I really felt underwhelmed.
I
I
thought that was hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me now. It almost feels sacrilegious to say it at this point, but I was never a desert kind of rat person. I loved my trips with my family to Death Valley and Joshua Tree National Parks, but kind of everywhere else in Southern California, all that other desert, I called the drive-by desert. Like I dismissed it as like barren, lifeless, muted color palette, interchangeable rock formations. Then you drive 20 miles down the freeway and it's like the same muted colors, same interchangeable rock formations. You see all these dilapidated shacks off the back roads and freeways of the Southwest. And I have this big map of BLM lands in California hanging in my living room. It's like 6 feet tall by 4 feet wide, and it showcases in different colors the different public lands in California. And the BLM lands are yellow. And looking at that map, most of 10 million out of the 15 million acres of BLM land in California are in the desert, and they're the exact places I once thought of as the drive-by desert. I'm like, I'm going to be getting to know these places. And that first trip, I did feel, I remember sitting under the shade of this Joshua tree pretty deep into the canyon and just feeling like I've got a long ways to go if I'm going to start to understand the mystery and the magic of the desert. And I don't know if you want to get into Terry Tempest Williams now, but or later. But yeah, that was like my very first trip that set everything off. And I came back feeling like overwhelmed by the task ahead of me
Mm.
and wondering if like what stories these lands did have to tell. And if I was going to find the story, then I needed to radically reshape how I approach these landscapes.
And what was it about that initial trip where you were like, okay, I'm feeling underwhelmed by this landscape after nearly walking a marathon, you said? How
Hmm.
did you decide, like, I need to change how I operate on these lands as part of the landscape rather than someone visiting? Like, what was that click for you where you were ex wanting to experience something deeper?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I got back from that trip and I had about a month before my next trip, which was to the Amargosa Basin. And for that first trip, all I could really think about was access. Like, okay, there's a campground there that I can camp in. That was kind of always my gateway to nature was through camping. And then I knew there were some from the BLM website, there's some hiking trails. And so I kind of approached that first trip of like, what can I get from the land? Okay, I can get a campground and I can get hiking trails. And just trying to walk as many miles, thinking that was the right way to approach these lands was just to see as much as possible in 3 days. And the big thing that changed between that first trip and that second trip was before I went to the Amargosa Basin, I learned as much as I possibly could about the place that I was going to. So I got on the Amargosa Conservancy website and they have all these wonderful explanations of the flora and fauna there. I went pretty deep into the indigenous history of the place and the stories that indigenous people that are still there have on these lands. Um, I just really tried to read and understand as much of the landscape as I could before I went, and that really helped shape my experience there. And then there's also, before I went on the first trip, I had read this book called Refuge by Terry Tempest Williams, this beautiful book memoir about her mother's struggle with cancer, but also about the high desert that she lived in Utah. And this one thing she wrote, like literally leapt off the page, blew my, I had never really thought of it this way, but she writes, if the desert is holy, it is because it is a forgotten place that allows us to remember the sacred. Perhaps that is why every pilgrimage to the desert is a pilgrimage to the self. There's no place to hide, and so we are found. And I remember thinking, is there is there really something holy about the desert? Is there something sacred? And if it's a pilgrimage to the self, like what am I going to find? And so I literally wrote that quote on my little journal and I took it with me on every single trip I went on, including that first trip. And I was sitting under the Joshua tree in Rainbow Basin, feeling underwhelmed, reading her words, thinking, there's got to be something I'm missing. And so part of the transformation between trip one and trip two was not just researching and learning, but also treating that second trip more as a pilgrim. And I always thought of a pilgrim as somebody that moved really slowly through a landscape, who was somebody that would notice and wasn't like trying to get as many miles in as they could, or elevation gain, or a mountain peak, or a waterfall, or whatever. Pilgrims to me are people that are very thoughtful and slow about the way they approach something. And so, on that second trip, I think that first day I walked 2 miles in like 9 hours. The
Major pace
slowest.
difference.
Yeah, I covered such little ground, but the meaning, the experience was so much more profound than that first trip. And of course, I was still learning to see the desert in a new way, but certainly Terry Tempest Williams, and through her nudging, 50 years ago that she wrote that, it really helped color that experience in a more profound way and grew from there, of course.
Well, I think it's really beautiful that you had this transformation shift from visitor and hiker to a pilgrim and more of an experiencer, like more of someone who is a part of the landscape rather than someone that's separate from it. And I think
Hmm.
that's a beautiful takeaway from your stories. And it really stood out to me when I was reading. Like, I finally felt like someone understood the experiences that I was having as a tortoise
Mm.
biologist, walking thousands of miles, not a day, not a day, but I've walked thousands of miles across the desert. And it's through that walking that my whole idea of the desert changed.
Hmm.
And there were times where I was walking pretty slowly with the tortoise, like moving with the slowness of the land.
Mm.
And that is when I realized like you form so much of your identity when you walk through nature and through the desert. It's literally called the desert experience. Like there's
Hmm.
papers about it and how walking in the desert is literally a holy experience. And you're the
Hmm.
first person to say it in a way that finally made sense and resonated with me. So I thought it was a
Oh,
beautiful quote and great transfer.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, the desert doesn't give you like these, like I wrote, it doesn't always give you these explosions of grandeur. It's like that, the sublime beauty that John Muir and Walt Whitman, Henry Thoreau wrote about is
At Abby.
Ed Abbey. It's like the desert doesn't always give you that sublime, walk into Yosemite Valley and just kind of look around and just be like stunned at every single turn.
Right,
And so to feel the desert and to see that richness, you kind of do have to learn to move slowly. And because it's the desert, if you have the right tools to not get lost,
right.
you can kind of wander in any direction that you choose, which is also part of what's special about BLM lands in the desert is you have that freedom to roam.
Beautifully said. I think there's a lot that goes into understanding the desert, and you really have to enter it in a way where you're not expecting instant gratification. Like you
Hmm.
said, getting that immediate, oh my God, Yosemite Valley, breathtaking. Like the desert reveals itself over time, much like
Hmm.
the animals. Like
Hmm.
you're not going to see a bear crossing the street, but you might be lucky enough to see a tortoise if you're there during, well, actually, you don't want to see any wildlife cross the street because that means there's a potential problem there. But, you know, animals and all of that about the desert reveal the beauty over time. And so it just takes a patient person to understand it. And
Hmm.
I think you have accomplished that patience. I'm sure of it.
Still learning, but yeah, we're getting there.
I like how you had both experiences. Like the first experience you went in kind of determined and you did that long hike and you're like, okay, like where's my enlightenment?
Sing to me, oh heavens.
Yeah, and then you kind of had to like go back to the drawing board and slow it down, and I feel like that in itself is a lesson, and each time you go back, I'm sure there's another lesson to learn, which is really cool.
Hmm.
No matter where you are in nature, but the desert specifically, because yeah, it's like once you go, you're like, okay, seen everything I need to see, but not really, right? Like even when we did talk to, or the episode's not out yet, but we did talk to Mojave Desert Land Trust, and we talk about different flowers that bloom, and sometimes some years they bloom, some years they don't. And so, like, that's another example of it just takes time, and
Hmm.
that patience is a virtue. I guess that's
Hmm.
why they say it.
Yeah, right.
So something I do want to break down for our listeners, and I know we've talked about it in other episodes, but BLM, Bureau of Lands Management, could you give us a brief overview of what you found while researching for the book and for all your adventures?
I will say maybe we should even define public lands because I remember in your book you mentioned that most people don't even know what that is. And so I'll let you take it away, but thank you so much.
Yeah, I think coming to terms with what public lands are and what they mean for all of us is like a paramount starting place to understanding what we shared collectively together and what we own collectively together and what's possible with these landscapes in terms of having a say in how they're managed, for example. So public lands, there's four agencies on the federal level that manage public lands. Everybody's heard of the National Park Service. We have 84 million acres of Park Service land. Then we have the national forests, which are 193 million acres across the West and some other parts in the East. The Fish and Wildlife Service manages 96 million acres, and then the BLM, astonishingly, manages 245 million acres across the Western U.S. And these and then we also have state and local public land. So even like your city or county park, that is considered public land. No one owns that. We kind of own it collectively, or the state park system in all the different states that in America. Ultimately, astonishingly, almost saved like 30% of the American surface area for the public, which is in a land of people that value private property above like everything else. It's kind of mind-blowing that we've been able to pull this off. I tell people like, yeah, we may not have the cathedrals and the of Europe. We don't have a Great Barrier Reef or the Great Wall of China, some of these renowned things around the world, but what makes us so unique is that we've saved 600 million acres of land for us. It's like the place where we find common ground. It's our greatest inheritance. And we all share and own it collectively together. It's kind of amazing, It's like, how did we get this giant mansion? Like we can argue about the rooms in the mansion and what we should do with these rooms and how it is all laid out, but like the fact that we all collectively own this giant mansion is crazy to me. And because they're public lands, they're for all of us. Each of those agencies have different mandates that we can get into, but they also are all open, like with campgrounds and access and trails, and they're kind of open for all of us. So even if you can't afford to like go on some remote resort hotel vacation or fly across the country to go to some beautiful city, like if you're within a couple hours of public lands in the West, especially here in California, like if you have a car and some gas money, you can get out there, which is, and most BLM campgrounds are 66 in California. They're either free to $10 a night. So these are like places where your economics don't really make a difference in what you have access to. Um, in terms of BLM lands, if we want to go back just a little bit, because I think it's such a crazy story. These were acres in the American West that they weren't beautiful enough to become national parks. They weren't forested enough to become the national forest. They were too lifeless for fish and wildlife. Not only that, we were basically encouraging westward expansion through the General Land Office. We were basically giving away tracts of land, like 640 acres, 320 acres, to encourage people to move west and homestead these places. And these were even lands that homesteaders almost given away for free were like, no thanks. I'm good. I can't do anything here. They're lands that developers didn't buy, that the railroads didn't buy, that land barons didn't buy. These were truly, historians called BLM lands the leftover lands or the lands nobody wanted. So these lands are truly like the 245 million acres that weren't scooped up by other federal agencies or state agencies, and nor by like all these big money developers. It's kind of astonishing that they were just left in the hands of all of us, kind of by default. And as I started to learn this history, like you can't help but think of these lands as like the scrappy underdogs of the American
Drive-by desert.
West,
The
the
drive-by.
drive-by desert, the lands nobody's heard of. It's crazy that they exist, and who doesn't love a good underdog story, you know?
I love that. Life overlooked. That's really the theme for this season too. And the desert is 100% overlooked. And mainly to your point about it not having that instant gratification, where you can see the big, amazing things right away. You're just driving by it at first. And then
Yep.
suddenly, oh, that's public land, BLM land in the desert. Let's go.
Yep. And it's kind of like that across the West. Like it's either desert or lots and lots of seas of sagebrush, grasslands. Like we do have some kind of epic scenery in BLM lands, but like a lot of it is sagebrush and desert, which, they sing quietly.
So we've touched on it in the past with a few of our episodes, Alex Wild being a big one. There's a lot of threats, especially this past year of 2025,
Hmm.
the big beautiful bill, and I know there's some big stuff that's being proposed right now. Just so our listeners know, we're recording in December 2025. Um, can you guys speak to the threats that BLM lands are facing and what our listeners can do to take action to protect these lands?
Yeah, they're really under threat more now than probably since the 1940s, right after the BLM was formed. I think the biggest threat is, of course, what we all went through this summer with the threat of just selling the BLM lands to the highest bidder with no kind of nothing in the bill that would suggest that they had to provide affordable housing or any kind of environmental review. These were just lands that were going to be sold off to the highest bidder, up to like 1.5 million acres of BLM land. Thankfully, thanks to a broad coalition of people from hunters to anglers to hikers to bird watchers, we're able to put enough pressure on Senator Lee to remove that from the big beautiful bill. So it was like this temporary victory, but we've been fighting the land sale battle since the late 1940s when Bernard DeVoto was writing about it. Um, So that's one big threat that just is going to keep coming up over and over, especially as long as Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, is involved. And then there's a million other threats like death by 1,000 cuts, making a big impact to like endangered species, resource management plans, like a lot of policy stuff that most people probably don't haven't heard of or don't understand, but there's, kind of a death by 1,000 cuts. And especially with BLM lands, this administration has basically opened up all BLM lands to exploitation. So mining, grazing, gas and oil, solar development. I mean, like AI centers, transmission lines. I mean, you name it. They are opening up every last acre of BLM land to the highest bidder. So the threats are feel very overwhelming right now.
And near. They feel like the threats are right at our doorstep because there's
Hmm.
already just so much pressure on the desert landscape, especially since that Ivanpah solar farm went up between Vegas and LA. That was back in 2014 or 2015, and I feel like since then it's just been totally like open season on the desert Southwest.
Hmm.
Of all your places that you've gone to visit on public lands, is there any one place in specific that maybe is under threat right now?
Yeah, so if you're driving up the 395, which have you guys driven up the 395?
Yes, it is my favorite highway in California.
It's one of the best highways in the world. And if
Mhm.
you're driving up the 395 or down the 395, most people are craning their heads to the west. Because to the west is the massive Sierra Nevada mountain chain with 14,000-foot peaks and snow capped for half of the year. But if you crane your head to the east, so the other direction towards Nevada, the direction that most people aren't looking, you also have a series of mountain ranges, but they're all kind of desert ecosystems. It's kind of where the Great Basin and the Mojave and the Sierra Nevada, these three different ecosystems merge together. And on the eastern side of the 395, south of Lone Pine, is this really incredible place called Conglomerate Mesa. And the peak of Conglomerate Mesa is over 7,500 feet. And you have views from Olancha Peak in the Sierra Nevada. You can literally see all the way to Telescope Peak, which is the highest mountain in Death Valley National Park. And it's this incredible kind of flat top mesa with these steep sides that kind of hang off the side, classic mesa style, which I don't think people know. Like we do have mesas in California. They're not just
What is
in
a mesa
Utah.
for those that might not know?
It's like picture like it's like if you took a hill and you flattened off the top of the hill and you're just kind of like this flat top, but then there's steep kind of ridges falling away from the side. So you have this like little mesa, but on top of this mesa, there's like these endemic plants that only grow in Conglomerate Mesa that are endangered species. It's like a path for migrating mule deer. You have raptors that live there. And then my favorite part is of Conglomerate Mesa is it's this refugium for Joshua trees. And it's one of like scientists believe 90% of the Joshua trees will be out of Joshua Tree National Park by the end of the century. And if that's the case, the places that our grandchildren and great grandchildren will be going to see these bizarro trees is a place like Conglomerate Mesa where it's higher altitude, cooler temperatures. So this is this beautiful refugium for these trees. And seeing Joshua trees in the park where they're next to these boulder outcrops and sandy floors and desert washes is great. But seeing them in a mix of juniper, pinyon, woodland is a completely different experience. And
Interesting.
so at Conglomerate Mesa, you're seeing Joshua trees next to junipers and to pinyon pines. And it's just this really diverse forest of like in nowhere else in California that I can think of where you get that diversity of tree in such a tight knit area. So it's this really wonderful place. I've been up there a couple of times. My friend Chris Cam recently made a documentary about Conglomerate Mesa called Hole in the Mountain. It's for free on YouTube. It's only 29 minutes long. And that really gives you this like bird's eye view of the indigenous storytelling that happens on Conglomerate Mesa that's happened for thousands of years and continues to this day. It talks about the threats. There's a Canadian company called K2 Gold that is trying to explore drilling on Conglomerate Mesa for gold. And so they're proposing new roads and like 75 different drill sites where they're going deep into the earth's surface to see how much gold is there. And the end goal for K2 Gold, or they go by the subsidiary as Mojave Precious Metals, is to essentially find gold and then sell those permits that they have to a bigger company that can then come in and actually like do a cyanide heap leach mine with open pit that would literally scar the landscape and destroy an already depleted watershed that's right there. Like the Owens Lake has already been dried up. LA took all that water and it's gone. And what's little left is then going to be used because you need a lot of water to create an open pit heap leach mine. Um, so the first comment period was a couple years ago. I think there were 23,800 people left comments to the BLM saying, hell no, we don't want to mine here. And so then the BLM came back and they required like a much more thorough investigation of the impacts that mining would have. And now we're just waiting for that report for the BLM to say, this is what we're going to allow with the permits that you have. So it's this really important habitat and wildlife corridor, and it's got a lot of cultural stuff for indigenous Shoshone and Timbishaw and Paiute have all called those lands home, gathering pinyon nuts. Like there's a lot of archaeological sites there. It's super important and super under threat. And so there's not a comment period right now, but you can go watch Hole in the Mountain and let it ruffle your feathers. And then the next time there is a comment period or a protest in Lone Pine, you might be more likely to go out there. It's a really, really cool spot.
I've always wanted to see this said Joshua tree woodland and pinyon and did you say juniper pine too?
Yep, juniper pinyon. It's pretty special. And if you there's a friends group that based out of Lone Pine and Bishop called Friends of the Inyo.
Oh yes, I'm familiar.
And they do, the first time I went there, or the second time I went there, I went up with Friends of the Inyo. So you can sign up for a weekend in the spring. Usually it's April or May, and they like take a bunch of four-wheel drive vehicles to the base of Conglomerate Mesa, and then they hike up to the top. So you can actually go out. You don't need four-wheel drive if you go with them. They'll probably do it again. I think they do it every year in the spring. So it's a really easy way to access Conglomerate Mesa if you don't have like a tricked out rig. Friends of the Inos, and they're fighting hard for some of the BLM lands in the Eastern Sierra.
Well, it's just shocking that in an area where the water has already been completely depleted and stolen from the indigenous peoples there,
Mm.
that they have the audacity to come in and take what little water they have left. Like,
Yeah,
what the fuck?
yeah, and build new roads in a roadless expanse of land.
Well, that's
Um,
what really triggers me because the highway expansion project on the 395 was already so conflicting for so many reasons. I was working on that project. It was my first field project when I
mm,
moved to California, when I was really out of Southern California. My first time ever seeing the Eastern Sierra Nevadas, and I was mind blown. And sure enough, we had a desert tortoise on the project site. A tortoise
wow, I
in
didn't
the
know
Great
that.
Basin. I know. It was the first ever recorded desert tortoise at that high elevation.
Wow,
I
that's
know.
so cool. I had no idea.
I know most people don't know that tortoises are there. So the idea of bringing in more roads to an otherwise roadless area would just fragment their habitat even further. And tortoises, when
Totally.
you fragment their habitat, they're not going to stop because you put a road in their home. They're going to
Right.
keep crossing that damn road whether we like it or not. And
Yep.
so it's a major problem. Road collisions and or tortoise and car collisions and roads are a whole nother topic, but anyways, I'm so glad that you have had the chance to see this beautiful place.
It's really special. I hope everyone can get out there, and there's an easy way to do it if you jump on the Friends of the Inyo website.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And we'll definitely be on the watch and lookout for when that comment period opens up again and urge our listeners to comment. So thank you.
I
Yeah,
remember seeing photos of the protests and all the gatherings and the BLM coordinator just kind of talking out of his ass at one of those meetings and having no real information about an environmental review, and he got torn apart by that crowd.
Yeah, I did not envy his job in that moment.
No.
Yeah, it would have been very because the BLM employees, like they're civil servants, they have to be nonpartisan, and so it's and their hands are tied by the 1872 Mining Act. So it's
Interesting.
like you could be an employee at the BLM and be all about conservation, but the 1872 Mining Act basically ties your hands together because
Oh,
that takes precedence over almost everything else, and it's really never been
I didn't know that.
it's never evolved. It evolved in a couple of ways since 1872, but it's like pretty much the same, which is when we were, panning for gold and like sluices and stream beds. And now
It's
it's not
so
like
weird how our government is like so slow to adapt.
that law will never change, sadly. The mining interests are very powerful.
Interesting. Well, hopefully not
Yeah.
powerful enough to harm this mesa and the endangered plants that live literally only on this mesa, which is incredible that any life form can exist up there. Like,
hmm It's pretty cool.
So, what are you doing to mitigate that sense of overwhelm in your everyday as someone that obviously loves the BLM and has written a beautiful book about it? Like what are you doing to kind of counteract that sense of dread?
There's a lot of things we can do. The simple things are like writing an email to your congressional person, making a phone call to your congressional office, posting on social media, like attending a protest. And those things are all great. And I do all those things. And you can leave comments when comment periods open, but a lot of this stuff is not for the average person who just kind of likes nature but doesn't really understand a lot of what's at stake. So I think the most important thing I do personally is get out on the land with as many people as I can. So I work for a organization here in LA called the USOL Project, and their mission is kind of twofold. One, to build community with urbanites, but also two, to introduce urbanites to the great outdoors. And so I lead trips for them every month, every other month, where I take, 20 Gen Zers and millennials out to Death Valley National Park or BLM lands or the Eastern Sierra. And we have these immersive weekends from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where we're hiking, we're camping. I would say about half of these people have never been camping in their life. And it's this remarkable thing that happens. We all gather in a circle on Friday at 5 o'clock. Everybody arrives. We provide tents and sleeping bags and sleeping pads and camp chairs to every participant because a lot of these people have never been. And I just see the faces of like people that are nervous. Like these are people who have never slept in a tent. They've
Yeah.
never cooked on a stove. They've never heard coyotes howling at sunset. Like never maybe experienced the elements like rain or we were in the Carrizo Plain once. We got hailed on. Like they've never experienced the elements. And that's Friday night. And by every time, every single time, by Sunday morning, we're in a circle again. We're talking about the most impactful parts of the weekend. And you hear the same things over and over, like, I never knew this existed, or I couldn't believe how beautiful this was, or those magic two words that you get from time to time, life changing. Like it always happens. And if we're going to build this broader coalition of people that are going to become advocates for BLM lands, we need more people to experience these lands in the present. And so for me, getting people out onto the land, it's like I don't even need to do anything once we're out there. The land just does all the talking. You go to the Carrizo Plains, you see tule elk, you see you see kit foxes, you see pronghorn antelope, you see wildflowers. It's just such anywhere we go, the land just speaks so loudly, and you can't help but have this transformative experience when you're out there. So for me, the hope amidst the overwhelming feeling of loss is seeing the faces of people come alive after they've been out there.
Oh, the magic of the desert. I love that. I love how
thank you for
we
sharing.
started this conversation with you camping as a young child and having that be your inspiration. And then here you are in your adult life and using that experience for good. I mean, this is
Mm.
so cool that you're able to guide these people out there and just like you said, you don't even have to do anything. Once they're out there, like nature's going to talk and have them experience the wonders for themselves. It's wonderful.
Well, and it's
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a theologian, Thomas Berry. He says we'll neither love nor save what we don't find sacred. And to me, that's so beautiful. Like Baba Diem also in 1968 has the famous line, "In the end, we will conserve only what we love." Like we're not going to get people to become advocates and reach out to their congressional people if they don't have an experience with a place.
Hmm.
It's just not going to happen. Like I've watched, I've tried. Like people aren't going to be willing to stand up for something that they don't know anything about. And so creating advocates means creating experiences for people to do just that. And if you've never been camping or you don't know where to go when you get to Death Valley or Carrizo Plain or Eastern Sierra, like you're never going to get out there. So, yeah.
We
And
always say on the show, you can't protect what you don't care about, and you have to
Hmm.
know what to care about. And that knowing comes from experience in these wild places with these wild animals and with wild people. Let's go out there and enjoy it and be kind of feral and like, I'm all here for the desert rat life. Like
Hmm.
let's become part of the landscape and feel alive with it. And I think it's beautiful because Josh, I think your story came and spoke to you in those lands, and here you are.
Hmm. Yep. The reciprocity you feel when you get something from the land, it's you just can't help but like want to do something to give back to the land, the ceaseless give and take, as David Abram says, the flow that moves in two directions. Like if you're getting something from the land, you have to give something back to the land, and we all have different ways that we're giving back, whether it's studying desert animals, desert tortoises, or leading camping trips, or taking photos that you share that encourage other people to get out there. There's a lot of different ways to become advocates.
for sure. It's also just nice that you're giving people a safe space to camp because I think camping is a hard sell.
Hmm.
I grew up camping and so I do enjoy it and I do love it, but I have my fair share of friends that like it doesn't matter how many times I ask, they are always going to say no
Hmm.
to me offering a camping trip. What do you tell people when they're like camping? Hell no, I'm definitely not going to do something like that. Like, what's your next response?
Oh man, that's a great question. I had to learn how to talk my kids into loving to camp, So I feel
Funny.
like that was like the foundation for how to speak to someone in a way that makes something compelling, even though they might not think it is. Uh, I think with USAW Project, what makes it great is, like you said, it's easier to kind of coax someone to come out there when you're like, hey, all these other cool people are doing it. And we have tents will be set up with your sleeping bag and sleeping pad. All you need to do is get your body from the city to the nature with some food, and we got you covered. You know, like we'll have pretty epic campfires, and I know all the places that we're gonna go. I know where to find the pronghorn. I know what trails are great. I know what lakes we're gonna swim in. I know when to see the aspens in the Eastern Sierra. Like, so I try to use all those manipulations, so to speak, to get people to come out. Um, all of our friends are deep, loving camping junkies, and so it's not hard to get rally a bunch of friends of ours to get out there. And if you're listening and you have kids, the easiest way to get your kids out camping is to talk your friends who also have kids that they're friends with to go with you. And watching like a group of families descend on a campground and then the kids just are gone. Like they just start they do their own thing. It's much easier to get a kid to go camping when their friends are going and not just their parents.
When I would go camping, it would be with me and a group of families, so a number of families, and so it was always so fun. And we had like a kid tent, so it wouldn't be like by families. It was like the kid tent, you know what I mean? Like parents are not
Yes.
allowed.
Yes, we do the
Yeah,
same thing. I think that's
nice.
such an appealing part of camping with friends. Yeah, having a little bit of autonomy, a little
Yeah.
freedom. And now it's fun because they've done it so much. Like we'll get to the campground that we've been going to every year. they're gone. Like they're off and running. They know where to go. They know how to camp. They know what being in nature looks like. They know how to be safe. It's like those more experiences you have, the more you can't wait to get back out there.
For sure. What is your favorite, if you could pin one down? Like what's your favorite camping story that you have with your family?
Oh my God.
Probably so many of them.
Yeah, we for a long time when my kids were they're older now, but when they were younger, we our goal every year for my wife and I was to camp 30 nights a year with the kids. So we didn't always hit 30 nights, but we hit almost always 20 nights a year. The pandemic year, we hit like 40 nights where
Holy shit, nice.
we're camping. Um, so yeah, I think one of my favorite our favorite place to probably camp in California is this place called Fraser Mill up in the southern western Sierra, in a place called Mountain Home Demonstration Forest. It's like 6,000 feet, these massive, you're camping in like second growth sequoia, and there's the North Fork of the Tule River kind of runs near there, and it's this place that just holds so much beauty. Like the fire went through there in 2020, and like returning after the fire and seeing the way the landscape kind of shifted, and then now like we're going back and we were there in September, and you're seeing like baby sequoias, their seeds can only open through fire, and so you're seeing these the sadness, the grief of seeing a beloved landscape be burned, but then you're also seeing this hope in these little baby sequoias that literally can only sprout through fire. So it's like this, talk about reciprocity, right? That's like such a beautiful story of reciprocity. Um, so yeah, I think we go there every year. I've been 3 times this year to Fraser Mill, but it's a really special place, no reservations. So, it's always open. There's 5 or 6 campgrounds up there. Uh, I have a million stories, but that's probably my favorite place. We always go to the Tule, North Fork of the Tule, and we have our little swimming holes, where the kids can learn to like jump off a rock and swim in the freezing cold water in the summer. And it's just a really special place. I mean, there's a million others too. The King Range up in Northwest California is a really amazing BLM land. I write about a whole chapter about the King Range in my book. Uh, that's the kids call that their second home,
Oh,
because we've been up there so many times. It's really special up there too.
well, Josh, I have to ask you, do you have a favorite region of, I'm going to say California since we're kind of basing this season on the Southwest and California. Do you
Hmm.
have a favorite region of California in terms of BLM lands that you like to visit?
Yeah, let's just go back to the King Range.
Yeah, the King.
It's up on if your listeners are familiar with the Lost Coast. I don't know,
Oh
you guys
yeah,
familiar with the Lost
up in
Coast?
Humboldt County.
Yeah, the Lost Coast is this, that's what romantics call it, and I'll add myself to the romantics
So romantic.
list. It's so, the first time you hear about the Lost Coast, you're just thinking like, what? It's the longest undeveloped coastline in California and one of the longest in the contiguous United States, which is shocking because it's California, and you think it's just developed all the way up to Oregon, but it's not. And there's this really wonderful slender ribbon of land called the King Range National Conservation Area that's BLM managed, 68,000 acres right on the coast. The King Range kind of rises precipitously from the ocean. It's like 4,000 feet in under 3 miles. You have this temperate rainforest in the spring, in the winter, that like hundreds of species of lichen and moss and fungi and mushrooms. It's just a magical place. Black bears, and
Wow.
the Mattole River flows right around it, around the King Range, and then kind of where it meets the Pacific Ocean is this wonderful estuary. The famous Lost Coast Trail runs through there that you can hike right along the coast for 26 miles. There's coastal prairie there and old growth Douglas firs and redwoods, and it's this really it's like the closest thing in California that we have to like a national park kind of level, grandiose, John Muir beauty. It's just absolutely stunning. There's 5 campgrounds up there, all first come, first serve, so it's really easy to go up there and find a place to camp literally right on the ocean. It's a very Very special place. It's literally the first national conservation area that we've had in the country.
Wow, I didn't know
So
that.
it's like the first time it was designated in 1970, and in 1960 this guy, this congressman named Clement Miller, this is only 14 years after the BLM was formed, when at the time critics called the BLM they mocked it by calling it the Bureau of Livestock and Mining,
Oh,
because
that's right.
if you were going to go on BLM land, you were going to see cows and you were going to see mining. So they just nicknamed it the Bureau of Livestock and Mining. And
Okay.
in 1960, this guy Clement Miller, the congressional person from that district, is speaking in front of the House. He does this hour-long speech talking about trying to preserve this place called the King Range. And he says, in quotes, I'm hoping for a Cinderella transformation at the BLM. He was like the first person who ever thought of BLM lands other outside of grazing and mining. He's like, we need to protect this as a conservation area. And it took 10 years, and it's a wild story that I won't go into. You'll have to read the book. Uh, but yeah, so there's a lot of really wonderful history in terms of like conservation part of the BLM, and the indigenous history up there is kind of incredible too. So yeah,
Cool.
King Range.
We'll definitely talk about the Lost Coast in our season 3, so that's great. I will say, I was hoping you were going to say your favorite region was the Mojave, but the Lost Coast is
Well,
pretty incredible too.
yeah, really should have said the Mojave somewhere.
No, no, no. This is
No,
great
this is
because
great. It'll
You
fit
it'll
into
open it
season
up to
3.
segue our.
California, so my mind just went to where my kids feel like is their second home.
No, that's beautiful. I love that.
Um,
Also, something that I was thinking about when you were talking so beautifully about your time there and your favorite camping trips and seeing the transformation of these, devastating fires, but then seeing the life after, reminded me of this short film that just came out this year called Forever Green. If
hmm,
I don't know if you've seen it, but I
hmm.
definitely recommend it. I'll send you a link after, but I recommend everyone watch that film and also have some tissues nearby.
It sounds great. Is it on like Netflix or YouTube
I
or?
actually don't know where you can find it because it's a short film and it was in the film circuit.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah,
I
I'll
can't wait. I
maybe
can't wait to watch it. It sounds wonderful.
yeah, maybe they have it on YouTube now. I don't know, but I'll find it for you.
Okay.
Josh,
Yeah.
would you at least say that you have converted to becoming kind of a desert rat?
Oh, I am a full-on desert rat. I owe so much of my transformation was because of that desert. All those experiences, walking all those hundreds of miles, like the desert completely reshaped who I am as an avid outdoor enthusiast. And it's it's honestly reshaped how I see nature in my own city. I live in the heart of Los Angeles, and before learning to see the subtleties and nuance of the desert beauty, I don't think I had ever experienced the like literally the trees in my neighborhood that I've walked by 1,000 times. I never noticed like the way the leaves change on the sycamores. You kind of like dismiss nature that you find in your backyard because you think like the real nature is out there. And learning to understand and see the nature in my backyard, all the credit goes to the desert.
Hmm.
If
That's
you can
cool.
learn to see the beauty in these BLM lands in the desert, you'll be able to learn to see the beauty in the city parks and trees and flora and fauna kind of in your own neighborhood. And these are the places we actually live and inhabit every day that also need our protection, but we often dismiss them because it's not the nature out there.
Yeah,
Good way of
100%.
putting it.
And I do love how LA is, it's kind of like a nature full city. You can kind of
Totally.
go anywhere and it's within, I feel like a 20-minute drive
Hmm.
on a good day. I mean, LA traffic is terrible, but it is pretty accessible. That's what I like about this city a lot. In
I
even
love
my
the
neighborhood.
Angeles National Forest. Coral and I have been camping there, and that was really fun despite almost being attacked by two
Yeah.
bears in the middle of the night.
Oh, really?
I almost shit
Sounds.
myself, but yeah, it was fun time.
Where were
Nice,
you
Coral.
camping? Like Buckhorn, or where were you camping up
Where
there?
were we? I don't know. We were like on the
We're
side of the road in a random creek.
so
Oh,
no, we were up by we accessed the trail by Azusa. That's where we went into the
oh, you went up
ANF.
there.
And I think there's the Fork River up there or something, and then the
Hmm.
The Bridge to Nowhere hike is beautiful.
That's a sweet
So
hike,
that's where
yeah.
we did. I love that hike. I saw my first bighorn sheep there, which was
Oh
cool.
yeah, that's a good spot for seeing the sheep.
Yeah, I love Diana.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't
Yeah,
so polluted, but
yeah, it's although if you get kind of deeper in there, it's
oh yeah.
you're like alone out there, you
At the
know?
end of the 10-mile Bridge to Nowhere hike,
Oh, you are
you're way out
definitely,
there.
yeah, yeah. And we have literally one of the biggest city parks in the world at Griffith Park
Oh,
that's
really?
incredibly
That's a big.
accessible. I think LA gets shit on for kind of being like the city of concrete, but if you live here, you're like, oh, there's a
Yeah.
lot of preserved nature here in little pockets and big pockets everywhere.
I love Griffith. I go there as much as I can. There was a time where I was there like 4 times a week. Like it was just it's really such a beautiful park. I'm so happy that it was preserved. It's kind of an interesting story. That's a whole nother topic, but um
Yeah,
yeah.
you should have my friend Casey Schreiner on. He wrote the book about Griffith Park. He's a
Oh,
writer.
cool.
Oh, let's
Um,
definitely make note of that. Yeah.
yeah, he like wrote a book about the history of the park and like how it came to be, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's really yeah, I would love to. So actually this is a good segue. I'm curious, as an author, what is your creative process like being, having these camping experiences, having this kind of like pull to these natural lands? Like when you kind of got to a place where you're like, I need to write, I need to do a project on this. Like, what is that creative process for you like in terms of being out there and then turning that to words on a page?
Yeah, into the story.
Yeah, when I first started going out to like the Rainbow Basin and then just kind of built from there, I wasn't, I obviously didn't know what I was going to find, so it was impossible to imagine one day that there would be a book. I just was trying to get out and document these places and like it kind of started with this curiosity, but also this love for exploring new places that I had never been to or heard of before. And then as I started getting out there, I started thinking about then like a year later, I started an Instagram after I had already done a year of exploring, thinking like, I wonder if people would be interested in this. And then it grew a little from there. And then I kept going. And then I remember thinking, I wonder if there's like a book here, like maybe because I had been taking photos the whole way. And then, yeah, it kind of built from there. And then I signed a book deal in 2022, I believe, but I still had a lot of places I hadn't gone to that I wanted to get to. And so once I had that, okay, I have to do this now. I have to like write this thing and get to all these places. The process was pretty simple for me. I had that journal that was writing in, and I would just, as I moved through these landscapes, I would just write every single thing that I could about like what I was seeing. I'd take a lot of pictures on my phone, just like random ones to like if I didn't know what the plant was, for example, to like go back and figure out what it was. And then I started because I had this book deal. I started meeting people like botanists and hunters and people that were experts on the land, and we'd kind of walk the land together. And then usually I'd get home from a trip. The trips were all like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days long. I'd get home. I mentioned this last night at the book tour event, but I would just write every single thing I could think of, like feelings and thoughts about the place that I had just been without any judgment for how good the writing was. Like Anne Lamott, the writer, she has this great book where she talks about writing shitty first drafts. This was like not even a first draft. This was just like writing down
The brain dump.
the brain dump of everything I felt during the time. And then often I would go back to the places I ended up writing about in the book. I went back to 3 or 4 times. I'd meet different people. I'd see more of the landscape. And then I kind of compiled all that together, like all of my initial notes from being out there, the the feelings and thoughts I wrote about after, and then all the information I learned about, like the history, the indigenous tribal history, like and then compiled all that, including some adventure stories to kind of keep the plot moving along. That was kind of my process. A lot of writing, and I think the fifth draft was the ultimate. I started at like 65,000 words, and it whittled down to 42, 43,000 by like the fifth or sixth draft, and that was the one that ended up going to my editor for like the first round of edits.
Yeah, very cool. So when you finally got to the point where you're like, okay, I'm sitting down writing, like would you are you writing at home or did you make it a point to maybe take your tablet or your laptop outside in nature?
Um, I can't believe I didn't mention that. That's probably the most important part of the question that you asked earlier. I definitely just wrote at home in coffee shops.
Oh, cool.
I just couldn't ever figure out a way to write in nature without being super distracted.
Hmm.
I feel that. Yeah.
I think people can do it. I just couldn't. Like, I'd even bring my laptop on trips and be like, I'm gonna write while I'm out there. Because, you're not really between like photograph sunset and sunrise, like that middle of the day, you're just kind of out there. You can't really, you can walk, but you can't take a lot of photographs. So I would always think I'll write during that time. And I
Mhm.
literally never did.
Well, it's funny you say that because so I'm an artist. I paint and I do a bunch of, stuff, but I always bring my paints with me and my pads everywhere I go. I literally never use them. Ever.
Same.
I never use them. And it's like I always bring it and I'm like, I'm gonna do it this time. I just never do. Like I do I try to make a point to do it sometimes. And even then I'm like, I'm actually not really enjoying myself.
Yeah, what is that?
I would rather just be staring at the nature
Yeah.
and like, truly immersing myself into it instead of distracting myself with my craft. And then I just end up I feel like I use it as a time to just absorb everything that I can. And then I kind of like you go home and take it to the drawing board. So it's funny that you kind of have that similar experience.
It's like nature is like, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
You're
I'm
gonna
not
bring
good
a
enough for
you're
you.
gonna bring a job to do while you're out here?
Right.
Like, yeah, that is interesting. I think a lot of people feel that way too.
Well, it's good to hear though, because I feel like social media is such a beast in this way, but it's like you see the people that like really take out their craft and then they do it. And I'm just like, okay, well, I tried and it's not working for me.
Yep. I mean, I guess like I have a camera out there. I'm using that,
Yeah,
but that feels different than like
it
art
does feel
or
different.
writing. Yeah.
Yeah, photography is such a great gateway, I think, to any art form. I know
Yep.
certainly for me, photography was my gateway into painting
I
and
didn't
all
know
of
that,
the other
Coral.
things. Yeah, I mean, my grandfather is a carpenter and photographer, so he introduced me to photography at a very young age. So I've been taking photographs since I was little, and now it's more accessible for everybody. So it's a little bit I think photography in general is just different nowadays, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's a nice gateway into other artistic forms.
Yeah, I think everyone needs that third path to nature. So you have nature is like your second path, just the like being out there, but like if you can add a third thing to be able to connect with nature, like whether it's bird watching or photography or hiking or hunting or fishing, like if you can add one more piece to the puzzle, you're just that much more likely to go out there. She's
Hmm.
like, well, I really want to take some photographs of nature. I really want to go on a hike, or I really want to go fishing, or I really want to find this bird that I've heard is in this location that I haven't seen before, or whatever it is. But like, I always, like on those USAL trips, I'm trying to find that one extra connection for people to like one more reason to come back. Because like maybe camping isn't enough. But if they
Right.
could camp and then also maybe see some wildlife, they're more likely to come back. Or if they could camp and then maybe also do a hike, they might more likely to come back, or draw or like paint, whatever it might be. That third connection is like the most important part of the return of people to public lands.
I think there's also a fourth connection that you're not mentioning, and it's one that I was thinking of when you were answering my question previously of your creative process of you, once you had the book deal, going back to these lands and then connecting with the community and all of
Totally.
these different experts. And it's kind of nice to hear you say that because obviously that's what we're doing here on the podcast is
Hmm.
Natalie went out into these lands and it's like, oh wait, we have all these crazy experts that, know so much and their knowledge needs to be shared. And so then we're going back and we're talking to them and uplifting them in this platform and you're doing something similar with your book. And so not only are you connecting with nature, but then you're connecting with community that also
Hmm.
cares about this. And I think, you know, as a human in the human race, we're kind of nothing without this connection, right? With each
Hmm.
other, with nature, and just other people that are doing really cool things. So I think
Hmm.
that's like a huge bonus to everything that you've been working towards.
Hmm. Yeah, you can, even if you're like really good at research, you can only learn so much just by talking to this, by on your own with a computer. But like if
Hmm.
you're out there on the land with these experts, it just changes everything. They know so much. I mean, they have PhDs or masters or whatever. They've like forgotten more than I'll ever learn. So why not go out there with these people? This is why I love your podcast. Yeah, you're introducing all of us to experts in the field.
Oh,
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. We definitely like to bring on a mix of people, and I think everyone is an expert in their own way, and we always like to come back to this that you don't have to be a scientist to care about
Hmm.
natural lands, about wildlife. And that's something, a message that I took to heart when I was out there in Barstow 2022 trekking around and thinking to myself, like, we can go further than this.
Hmm.
There's a message here, and we just need to connect it to people so they understand the importance of the planet.
Amen.
Well, awesome. It sounds like we need to go on a camping trip with you if you know all the good spots.
Yeah, jump on a USAW project.
I would love to.
Our listeners who might want to also go on a camping trip, how can they find you and camp with you?
I mean, the easiest way is to follow USAW Project on Instagram. They're very active. Usually like a week, the end of the month, they'll release the schedule of all the events for the next month. So some of them are really simple, like a Griffith Park night hike, where you see like owls at night. Some of them are camping trips, like the ones I lead. They have like 60 to 70 events a month. It's kind of amazing.
Oh,
So if you follow them, you'll eventually lead to one of my trips. I think the next one will be Death Valley in February or March. Um, you can also find me write a weekly Substack where I'm trying to write about the landscapes in a way that encourages people to get out there. So I try to give a lot of I write more long form that I can't write on Instagram, but it's like a way for people to access these landscapes and see pictures and maybe pique their curiosity and interest. So yeah, Forgotten Lands Project um, .com. You can find all of that good stuff.
And where can our listeners find your book if they're interested?
Wherever books are sold, your local bookstore, your online bookshop.org, or the big A,
Mm.
or my website. You can buy it on my website if you really want to support like local writers. Try to buy from on their own website because that's where they can make more than $2 a copy.
Oh, really? That's great to know and certainly something I did not know. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, of course. Not every writer has like their own website where they're selling their book, but
Mm.
um, I was lucky enough to sign with Heyday Books, and they're amazing in a million different ways. But yeah, I'm allowed to sell the book.
That's wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
good to know. Yeah, buy on your website then. We'll make sure
Mhm.
that that's linked. Cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Oh, one last thing that we always do on our podcast. What is bringing you hope these days? Is there something that you can leave us with? Maybe another quote. You've already shared a few good ones with us, but something that gives you hope before we leave today.
Oh, that's a good question. There's so many things that give me hope, so I'm not hopeless in my silence. Um, I mean, seeing these on these USAL trips, like that Sunday morning, like kind of sitting in a circle talking about what we took from the weekend, like that gives me hope. Seeing their faces light up after a weekend of whatever it is we were doing, and knowing that they're more likely to come out and experience nature, that gives me hope. Like seeing people that have never experienced it fall in love. I mean, is there anything better than that? I get to see it with my kids, like we've been out hundreds and hundreds of nights, and watching them come alive, like get out of the car and just take off through the campground or wherever we are. exploring. That gives me hope. Um,
Well said.
I yeah, I think the idea of public lands is the last bipartisan thing that exists in this country. And the idea that you can get an OHV enthusiast, a bird watcher, a hunter, an angler, a hiker, all in the same room, all protesting to keep our public lands public, that gives me hope.
Mm,
There's no other scenario where all those people are in the same room, right?
It's
But
true.
this is our common ground and no one wants to see it diminished. And so we have these people from incredibly different groups from across the country who are all coming together to say hell no to selling off our public lands. Is there anything more powerful than that? I'm not sure, you know?
Well, it's just a reminder that nature is nonpartisan and we all
Yes.
have something out there that is meaningful to us. And I really like what you said about finding that third connection and Coral bringing up that fourth connection with community, because I do think it's important to go there and not just take pictures and leave. You do have to connect to this kind of place-based idea of what it means to understand this place in like a meaningful way, and doing whatever it is, your craft, your hobby outside can really
Hmm.
help with that. And it's amazing that so many people do recreate in nature, and it's just a reminder that it is nonpartisan and there's so much hope in public lands. So thank you.
yeah, it's very uniting. Definitely.
Yep.
Josh, I thought you might like this quote, since sometimes we like to end on quotes. I'm sure you've heard it, but I feel like it's hopeful, and I think our listeners might like it. I think we maybe have already shared it once this season, but I'm just going to say it again. We shall never achieve harmony with land, any more than we shall achieve absolute justice or liberty for people. In these higher aspirations, the important thing is not to achieve, but to strive. It's by Aldo Leopold.
Love it.
Have you heard of that one before? Of
Yes.
course you have.
I have a few Aldo quotes in the book.
I love that one because it's a hopeful reminder. And I think it goes back to what you said about the 1940s, where we've been fighting for public lands since then. And so if
Hmm.
we've been fighting for public lands for that long, then it's just proof that we can keep going.
Yes. That is so hopeful. We have the blueprint to keep
Exactly.
these public lands in public hands, you know.
Oh, I like
Public
that.
lands and public hands. I like that.
That's not me. That's backcountry hunters and anglers.
Okay.
Oh, is that right?
A really cool group. Yeah, public
Yeah,
lands and public hands.
that's very
Cool.
cool.
It's a great slogan. That's hopeful.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Josh. If you're listening, please get The Enduring Wild by Josh Jackson.
It is the best book.
Thanks.
You won't regret it.
Thanks so much for having me, and it's been a real privilege to be able to talk with you guys.
Thanks for
Yeah,
being here, Josh.
you. All right, Planet People, thank you so much for tuning in to our first book club series. We're so excited to bring this to you guys, and there's going to be one each month. And next month, I'm excited to announce that our next episode is going to be with the book Yuck by Barrett Baumgart.
Well, also very fitting for our season two, as we have had many discussions about the Joshua Tree and the importance of it. And I'm so glad someone is writing a book about it. I mean, there are many books about the Joshua Tree, but I mean, like in modern day, there's so many more recent threats to these trees. And whether or not he talks about that, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, so if you can, definitely get a copy of The Enduring Wild with Josh Jackson and then also Yuck with Barrett to get excited for our February book club.
Woohoo!
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Planet People. We are thrilled to have you as part of our community of wildlifers who care about protecting the planet for future generations to enjoy.
We hope that by listening, you feel inspired to connect with nature and become a steward of the planet by getting involved and taking action with your local community conservation organizations. Until next time, stay positive, Planet People.
This episode was produced by Natalie Jean Sybil, Coral Carson, and Hugh Carr. Directed and edited by Coral Carson. Theme song by Hugh Carr under the artist name Flama. Thank you, team.